Welcome into the Three Wanks FPL podcast. I'm your host, Luke, and I'm joined here by Mack and Sharpe. Clearly, we're trying out some new things in the preseason here with regards to our audio visual. We're here to talk 2 days before the Game Week 1 deadline, share some of our player data, as well as some insights into our Game Week 1 drafts. It seems like, without having seen your guys' drafts too intimately, it seems like we're all going pretty different directions. So I'm excited about some pretty good discussion here. It feels like the Game Week 1 deadline always sneaks up on me. Like last week, I felt like we were really high level outlining teams and doing all that kind of stuff. And then you can't really make any actual plans because players are coming in last second. And today we have a bunch of bombshell transfers and what have you. But all that to say, we're back. Game Week 1 is in 2 days, and we've got plenty to talk about. How are you guys feeling going into that?
Pretty pumped. I'm glad. I'm not going to lie, this is the first season where I feel like I'm the one that started us off in terms of interest level in paying attention to the FPL season. So I'm pretty pumped you guys have caught up. We're here. We're all putting drafts together, playing around with some players. Not just talking transfers, but the injuries that are coming out, both Community Shield wise and just training wise. So there's a lot going on. I'm excited to be back for it.
I feel like that's the homecoming. Like, I think Mack and I have both had really good seasons and then really bad seasons to follow. And so there's that level of like, okay, got to reset. Like, don't want to get because last season I was the same way. I was like, oh, I had a great year. Like, this shit's easy. Let's go. I'm ready to cook. And anyway,
yeah,
we've all taken our turn.
I think there's like a 3-year cycle to FPL. Like, you have a great season, then you get cocky, and then you don't believe anybody's or any of the data because you're like, nah, I know better. I finished top 10K last season. And then you get crushed, and then you have a rebound year. So it's my turn this year. I'm pumped. I'm going to win. I'm ready.
I can't wait to break the cycle. That's going to be the best part about this.
No. Don't break the cycle. I like it.
There's obviously a lot that's happened literally in the last like 24 hours. I feel like some of which are transfers that literally happened today, some of which are transfers in the last couple days. So obviously we all have what are our current final drafts, I should say, but lots to unpack. Do y'all just want to start kind of with the player list and how we're feeling? Or I guess before we get into that, maybe we jump first with last time. I feel like we talked a lot about the team overviews and like deep dives and what have you. We didn't have a chance to kind of do that reassess of like where we're at going into the season about, anything from last season, lessons learned. Obviously, Sharpe, just go with your gut and you're going to be fine. Or like anything that you're taking into this year that we learned from last year. Obviously, in terms of structure of the game, a lot of similarities to last year. DEFCONs are back. The double chip cycle is back. Where are your guys' heads at, like high level strategy wise? Do you feel like you're taking anything into this season that you didn't have last year?
Yeah, I think Mackie jokingly kind of touched on the cycle. I think I got that on the back half where I did a few things because I hit as a fucking hat trick. I hit Mukiele. I hit Rodon. Like I hit some crazy things last year. Where on the back half, we'll get there, C-Rod. We got comments on the right, but I feel like I learned that a little bit when I brought some guys in at the back half of last year that was in my head. So I'm staying humble coming into this. One thing, ironically, that I feel like I learned is hits need to be legitimately worth it. You can't just take hits for fun, but if you do take them, they can pay off pretty well.
I don't believe you learned that at all.
I think I learned.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm coming into this with an appropriately aggressive strategy, so I think attacking the games as best you can, and we can get into that with my chip strategy. But playing it to where you still have flexibility, I think, is super important.
Yeah, building on that, I think the lessons that I learned is last year was only the second year with 5 transfers, and I felt like I was too patient at the beginning of last season. I started with those Aston Villa assets, and I kept just going like, oh, they'll come good, and they'll come good. Eventually they came okay. I'm not even going to say good. Eventually they started performing though, but I was just being like way too patient trying to roll transfers at the beginning of the season. So my bigger lesson this year is the guys who are going to be the top scorer of the season have to start scoring in game week 1, right? Or like very early. So just believe it, start getting them and adapt. And so, whereas I typically propose a more patient strategy, I think I'm going to attempt to have more of an arc this season where I'm more aggressive in the first half of the season. And then like, as we get later and the data becomes more solidified and trends become trends versus just data points, then I think I'm going to try to slow it down. So a little bit of mix of sort of maybe the strategy I adopted last year, Sharpe, and the strategy you adopted last year.
Yeah, I think for me, you're saying be more patient or less patient. I feel like it's the same thing, but the word I would use is stubborn. Like I feel like last season, kind of to the point of what you just said, of feeling like cocky as fuck coming in and being like, last year I rolled a shit ton of transfers because my team was doing great and that was a good thing. Like I was able to make wholesale changes and like have mini wild cards and stuff, and that was awesome. So last year I was like, I'm not using it. I'm gonna barely use transfers. I'm gonna try to like really take a back seat and like not make any big drastic moves until like week 6 when you have all your information. And then we saw last season people who wildcarded game week 4, like, and just picked the guys who were scoring, like your Semenyos of the world, capitalized on that. And so good for them. I think just to counter that a little though, and like what you said, Mac, the pendulum can swing a little bit the other way. I think last season was a season where the players who were doing really well at the beginning kind of did well at the end. Although Bruno is like a notable caveat there. Like you remember, we were sitting here in game week like 8 or something being like, he had just missed another pen and Sharpe was laughing at us for even thinking about bringing him in over somebody like an Mbomo. So some of that stuff, like you do have to have the patience on, and it's obviously case by case. But yeah, I wonder if the pendulum will swing a little too far that way this year. I feel like last year, if you remember, talking of chips, last year I did bench boost 2. And at the time, like nobody was doing that shit. But now I feel like for whatever reason this season, the larger community is on this like, oh, okay, we're going to do early bench boosts. And that was like, I remember 2 years ago, that being a James from Planet FPL was like, I'm going to bench boost 1. And everybody's like, this guy's fucking crazy. And now that's like a template strategy. So I think I really love that they're doing the double chips again. I think it's great. But yeah, I'm curious, where do you guys land high level on that? Are you planning your chips out a lot in this first half of the season? Are you kind of remaining open to different strategies? What are the options that are on the table for you guys?
Yeah. Before we jump fully into that, I am going to answer the question that we have in the chat just to give the high level for those that are relatively more new to the game. Double chips, if you have not played, or if you played beyond the last 2 seasons, you only had your chips for the entire season. So you get a bench boost chip, a free hit chip, a wild card, and a triple captain. We can argue over which one of those is most valuable. But now, I believe it was starting last season and this season, you now get those 2. So you'll get those 4 chips for game weeks 1 through 19, and then you'll get those reset for game weeks 20 through 38. So it allows you to be, like you're saying, much more aggressive early on with those bench boosts, because you're no longer worried about targeting double game weeks later in the season, because you will have that reset to be able to target those. So for that reason, I'm looking at this. I am currently on bench boost 1. I've seen a lot of people say it, maybe tongue in cheek, but I think it's a little bit true. Like, you get to fully wildcard game week 1 into a bench boost. Like, that's essentially what you're doing by picking this team, because you're starting from scratch. So I think that provides some flexibility. But the other reason that I feel like I like it is that it's very easy for it all to be wrong to start the season. Like, this template, the way that we're looking at players, could be incorrect, but I don't think I'm going to get 15 players incorrect. I could get 11 players incorrect, or like some of those 11 players. I think this bench boost is going to give me a little bit of a grace period here in game week 1, because if last season, I think I started in like 6 million. Like, I started terribly and finished 29K. So if I can get a little bit better of a start here, I feel very good about that. So I'm starting a little more aggressively with the bench boost, feeling good about that, but I'm using it almost as a defensive play rather than an attacking play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I last year was not on the early bench boost. I'm leaning more heavily towards it this year. I didn't like it last year because I'm a big believer that like everything that you see in the first couple weeks is not true, and the players are lying to you. Because like, Sharpe, if I recall, you took a hit after game week 1 for Reiners last year, right? And then
I think Chris Wood was involved in that too.
Oh
so.
yeah, and so maybe was that a
that's right. That's
-8
right.
for Chris Wood and Reiner? And like, they did pop off, and I was like, oh, Chris Wood's not good at the beginning of the season. I was proved wrong after game week 1, did a formal apology, and then was proved right for 37 weeks after that. So I'm generally against it, but Luke was arguing with me last year. He's like, I just think that an early bench boost is valuable because it's really hard to set up for a bench boost. And I completely ended up agreeing with that. That ended up being my experience. I pulled it off in a random week and it was actually decent, but that was luck based more than strategy. So I think that the 2 times to bench boost historically are either when you have like obviously just a great week or like straight after a wild card. And on the back of that, then I'm probably going to use my bench boost and use the start of the season as like a wild card in quotes, and then bench boost up that. What I'm not going to do though, and what I'm disinterested in doing though, is I've seen a lot of strategies that are so heavily reliant on the bench boost, like in game week 1 with like a lot of 4.0 players, and like, bench boost 2 is another huge thing. And everyone's getting the Coventry players to play against Hull. They're getting like 3 of them. And then they're going to wildcard in 6. I don't like wildcarding early if possible, especially because we don't have AFCON transfers. Like if I could wildcard around 11, that'd be great. You got to be dynamic. I will shift if I need to. And if my team ends up being terrible, then I'll wildcard in 6 like everybody else, but I'd prefer not to. So I think I am going to bench boost early, but I'm not going to maybe go for like the all-time strongest bench boost and then force an early wildcard. I think I'm going to try to go for like a more mediated approach.
It's so funny that you say that I convinced you last year on the early bench boost, because now I'm definitely flopped. And part of the reason, if you guys remember back, like I'm sure you don't remember this as painfully as I do, but I did the bench boost too. I don't think it was a bad choice at the time. However, the problem with the early bench boost inherently is that players who you think are going to start just might not. And so what happened to me was week 1, Arias, who was new to Wolves, started. And he played a full 90 minutes, and I was like, sick. So I'm bench boosting next week, like he's good to go. And then he didn't start and played like 20 minutes. In the same week, I think it was that same week, Palmer also surprisingly didn't start. And at the time, like obviously now we know, right? Like a lot more. But at that time, there was no doubts about him starting. And so obviously everybody like do your own thing. But my word of caution would be like with the early bench boost, you just really don't know. Even a lot of these like template players like a Bumo or who's the Arsenal Solis, like some of those guys that in theory should play, or even some of these World Cup guys that are coming back. Like if you have any of those guys in your squad who there's even a slight doubt that they might not start, it's definitely worth thinking about. And specifically then we're also talking about like the Coventry guys and the Hull guys. Like those teams it's not like certain who's going to be their players. They've brought in a lot of guys, that type of stuff. So just all that to say, there's so much uncertainty at the beginning of the year that I would caution against it. However, I understand like the appeal of it. All that said, without divulging too much of my draft, like I've been able to spread a lot of my capital like across the team and get a lot of players who like have a lot more assured minutes. Whereas if you're going, having to go into budget players a lot more, it's a little bit more uncertain. So there is some temptation there, but I think from my perspective with bench boost, I'm really not planning for it. I'm saying if it shows up, awesome. If it doesn't, awesome. I don't really care. To your point, Mac, I might just wait until I wild card and then do it the next week later down the line when I have more info. But I am potentially looking to utilize my chips really early. Currently, with the draft that I've built, I'm planning a free hit 3 in theory. And if that goes absolutely horribly, that could become a wild card 3. I'm so with you, Mac. I don't want a wild card in 3. That feels really dumb. But in the vein of last season of like not being afraid to make changes early on if you really fucked up, I'm keeping that in the back of my mind. And then the one that I do think everybody should be thinking about playing early, not necessarily you have to, but just thinking about it, is the triple captain. Yeah. Right now, the 2 most expensive players are playing the promoted sides in the first few weeks. You have Haaland playing Hull in 7, I think, Coventry in 3, and then Bruno playing Ipswich and Hull in the first 2 weeks. And so you're not, if assuming that those 2 guys, similar to like Salah and Haaland in previous years, are just going to be like the main caps most of the year, those are probably the best opportunities to do that. So I would be thinking about that. I'm sure that Haaland game week 3 is going to be a huge triple cap week. And I think with regards to chips, again, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, me kind of booking free hit 3 for myself puts me at a disadvantage because then it means I can't use the triple cap that week if everybody else is. You could argue that's an advantage if I hit in a different week, but like I think more than previous seasons, probably partly because of those matchups between like top tier teams and promoted sides in the first few weeks. That's part of the incentive to use some of these bench boosts is like, oh, I can just load up on United players or on City players and have a really solid bench boost. So anyway, I think we're all like I think Sharpe, you're in the headspace that I was in last season, like in general of just like, you've been consuming FPL clearly. And yeah, it can go either way, but I'm taking the opposite view of like last year. I think I was too involved where I'm trying to be like, all right, take it back and just like try to build, to your point, Mac, the team that looks longevity wise the best on paper so that I'm adaptable depending on what comes my way. Once I show you guys my draft, I don't know if I'm actually doing that, but in theory, that's what I'm telling myself to do. So
yeah, the other thing I want to add is that I'm a total liar. Like, do as I say, not as I do, because this is going to be my 9th season playing FPL. I counted them out. I know I saw your eyes go wide. I'm turning into an FPL unk. And I think I've genuinely bench boosted before 8 in every single one of those. Like, because inevitably I just pick a terrible team at the start, and you get some good data. And I think it's just as much about like, how do you adapt versus how you start, and if that means you have to force a wild card, I'm not going to be afraid to do that. One of the questions we have in the chat, actually, and I think this is a semi-good segue as we start to get into some of the player conversations, is high ownership versus low ownership. How do you guys view building a squad? Are you guys going to go really aggressive and try to get some steals, or are you just going to go for really safe minutes? Luke, it sounds like you're leaning more towards safer minutes, high ownership guys. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's. I think you have to pick guys that are going to get consistent minutes, or at least 11 guys that you think are going to get consistent minutes, and then you want to take some risks on some other guys. So Solis is one of those guys that probably has a little bit of a question mark around him, despite how well he's played in the preseason. But to me, well worth the risk. But otherwise, you look at my team, and I think I have a lot of guys that I am very confident in will be starting and will be playing ideally 60 or more minutes, if not the full 90 in those games. I think expanding that conversation and including just DEFCONs, and I'm going to call it high floor, maybe low ceiling guys, I like, and what I did last year with like an Anderson and other guys, is look for those guys that I could get a 4 floor on. So I'm trying, we'll see how it plays out in these first couple weeks, leaning into those guys that I can count on week in, week out to be a 4 floor unless something goes wrong. And then taking a risk on some of those other guys to get my high risk, high reward. So I think it's good to have a mix up of both. When you're looking at chalk ownerships, for example, I think you have your Haalands, your Brunos as those guys that you like need to have. And after that, I would say it's so wide open right now, in my opinion, because you have a Semenyo. We look at what happened in that Community Shield game, and yes, it's still a preseason. It's still, how much are they really putting out there? But like, City did not look good. Like, that was not enticing. So now I'm looking at that. I'm like, do I need a Semenyo? Do I need to triple City? Do I want Foden for $1.5 million cheaper? Like, there's different ways that you can look at that. So I think it's a little open right now. I think you have those couple high guys that are important, and then the rest of this is who's catching your eye.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really considering ownership at this point too much. I'm just going to Sharpe's point, like the guys that I think are going to be the most secure and what have you. But I mean, you're talking Community Shield there. I feel like that's as good a segue as any to just kind of get into like what happened. Obviously, you don't want to draw too many conclusions from preseason in general, but this feels like slightly different, right? You have 2 of the top teams in terms of players that we're going to be looking at playing against each other with their starting lineups, or in theory, their starting lineups. So yeah, what were your guys' takeaways here? Obviously, I was keeping up with Sharpe's tweets during the game, so I think I know where he's at. But yeah, I'm curious, like, how much stock do you guys put in this? What takeaways did you have, and like, how did this affect your FPL team?
So I want to get in here real quickly. Fun fact: this is from the Opta article that I stole this graphic from. So this isn't like my fact or anything. But since I think it's 2011, the winner of the Community Shield has only won the Prem one time. So I'm not going to go and say that
Let's
this is like
fucking go.
yeah, I know, right? Fuck Arsenal. I'm not going to go and say that this is like indicative of anything. Arsenal are clearly the best team on paper. I also watched this game, and then I watched some highlights and some recaps, and yeah, Manchester City have gone from one bald fraud to another, except we called Pep a bald fraud as a meme because he used to rotate players in FPL, and it was like, oh my god, like he rotated KDB out randomly, and I think Maresca is an actual fraud, like less than 1 xG when you have the quality that City has. And this like staircase pattern, for those who have never seen a graph like that, is jumps in XG. So obviously when Arsenal score, it jumps straight up. XG is expected goals. My takeaway from this is that Manchester City were not generating good chances nor taking good chances. Like Foden had a shot, but it was blocked. But yeah, I mean they were cut through like Swiss cheese. It was just really disappointing, is what I'll say.
I feel like to caveat though, it's worth noting, like, these were Haaland and Elliot Anderson's first minutes with the team since the World Cup. This is, as much as you're absolutely right, like watching the game and seeing what happened, like, yeah, Arsenal dominated this game, but I don't know if this is the City that we're going to get going into the season per se, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it's indicative of anything, but I think that if you're looking at trends, one, I would have expected more from City,
right.
But also I think probably the more true trend is that Arsenal are continuing to fire on all cylinders, right? If you want to take one thing away from the game, I think it's probably that less of an indictment on City, because City are playing theoretically the best defense in the game right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call it 3 takeaways, and we'll see if I go over that. I'm not reading into it that City's terrible, in that Haaland has played 4 Community Shield games, scored in none of them. In those 4 seasons, he scored 8 goals in game week 1. I can't read too much into Haaland not scoring in this. I still got to look at his hot starts and the consistency that he's had in that and say, hey, I want him in my team, and I want that early on. So to me, I'm still having him. The other takeaway that I had out of this is it works for both left backs. O'Reilly was there on every single rebound. He was the closest guy to the goal, crashing the box. He's $6.5 million. He didn't put any away here. Is he going to put any away? I don't know, but that certainly caught my eye that all of a sudden he was right there. And that's against a goalie who, I hate to say it, is arguably one of the best ones in the Prem, in Raya. So other goalies are going to allow more rebounds, come back out, and I think he's going to be there for him. Then you look on the other side, Calafiori, honestly, may as well have been playing left wing. Like, the way that he was running in next to the striker was insane. So as we're looking early season at who in that back line do we want, at $5.5 million, the attacking threat and the cross your fingers that he plays 60 minutes and gets a clean sheet seems really enticing at $5.5 million. So for me, those were 2 big takeaways. The other part about it is Zolis, I kind of already touched on. He has had an incredible preseason. It looks like the Belgium league is the league to pick from at this point. Player of the year over there, 40 goal involvements on the season, and he has not slowed down at all. He put some beautiful balls in. It was really nice to see. So if he can continue to do that and does get to continue to play out there, that's actually fantastic. Calafiori and Zolis are just in the same place. Like, get both those guys. That's exciting to me. So those are 3 takeaways that I have when it relates back to FPL specifically too.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse me for flashing the wrong graphic. For some reason, Arsenal put the team that wears blue in red. Or excuse me, not Arsenal, Opta, and then vice versa. But I only brought this up. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I brought this up to lend to your point. Like, if you look at Calafiori and Solis, like, Solis is a ball carrier, a good dribbler, and a great crosser. So what I find interesting about this is, 1, how high Calafiori's getting, and then 2, how low Solis is able to get to receive the ball and feed someone like Havertz. So I always look for like linkages on the side. When you look on the other side and you see Madueke is making these really deep runs, that's interesting, but that means he's probably just gonna be like a cross merchant. Solis doesn't have a lot of passes. What this graph represents is passes to and from a position, and the thickness is how frequently are. So obviously Raya has a lot of passes out to Gabriel and Mascara. But this means that Solis likes to get the ball and he likes to carry it and he likes to run with it. And similarly, like, Calafiori's not making like a ton of passes. He's also carrying the ball. So I like guys who get on the ball more because that means they can do stuff. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sure.
The only thing I was going to say is, on the flip side of this, if you do want to pull the City one back out, The thing that I found maybe not surprising but interesting, there's O'Reilly up there as well, but Semenyo, I mean, look at how hard they were feeding him the entire time, but when they're feeding him, he is still so wide, and they're allowing Foden to really play right behind Haaland inside. I don't know necessarily how that's going to play out in terms of FPL points, but what it tells me is that Foden is going to be up there involved in the box, and at $1.5 million cheaper, it got me a little more excited for him than it did Semenyo.
Yeah. Quick question. So we have a question about Gyökeres. How do you guys feel about that? We obviously see Havertz up here while we're on the Arsenal pass map.
I'm not ready to get hurt again. Is kind of where I'm at. But also, I think, I mean, in all seriousness, right? Like Havertz and Gyökeres are going to compete for minutes. If I was going to pick one of them, I would pick Havertz because I kind of think after the performance that Gyökeres put in last season, if I'm Arteta, I'd probably prefer Havertz. But so I think Havertz is like actually a consideration. I just think if you're looking at him comparatively to João Pedro at the same price, who doesn't have that level of competition and has the last season to go against, I just don't think it's really a contest. So it's really more about like team structure. If you have João Pedro in theory, do you also have Havertz? Then what does the rest of your team look like? But I don't think, obviously, like it seems like the template front three right now is that Haaland, João Pedro, and DCL. And obviously you can throw in a different mix of players there, but I just don't see how, unless you're replacing like Haaland with Havertz there, or making deep cuts in your team, how you fit Havertz in. All that to say, no on Gyökeres for me.
I mean, it goes back to what we were just talking about picking guys with minutes. Neither of those guys have locked in 60 minutes, in my opinion, week in, week out. So I would stay away from them, even if you're a diehard Arsenal fan, because I think you have guys, you go Haaland, you can go João Pedro, you can go DCL that are locked in. You can look at Isak, he has no competition up there for the first half of the season. You could go down to Brian Brobby at that point and say, hey, at least he's going to get me 2 points. Like, that is more consistent what I think either of those guys could get me.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say on the whole, like what I took out of this game to the point of, I've seen a lot of like what I feel like are overreactions of people being like, City aren't going to keep any cleans this year, like confirmed. It's like, I don't really think I take anything to that extent out of this. But I think if anything, this just showed me that, City is under a new manager now, and there could be a little bit of a rocky start there. But I think in terms of minutes, I want to talk Sharpe about what you were talking about with Calafiori. It seems like everybody's reaction was transfer out Gvardiol and O'Reilly and put in Calafiori into their teams, right? I think there's like some stats out there. The ownership literally like skyrocketed after the game, which makes sense. However, I feel like I had the opposite reaction. Obviously he scored, and to your point, he was very advanced. But Mack, if you bring up or I don't know if you still have it, but like the positional graph there, it showed that Ben White is like almost equivalent to him in terms of that pushing forward. And Ben White played the entire game, and Ben White hit DEFCONs. So for me, that was more of like encouraging. I think Calafiori is a great upside pick. The reason that I'm hesitant to go with him is because of the threat of him in Hincapié. And I feel like this game showed me like, oh shit, yeah, like he got pulled before 60 minutes, right? So if this is real FPL, yes, he scored, but he loses the clean sheet. And how often are you going to rely on him scoring an open play? So not to dissuade anybody from going Calafiori, but for me personally, my reaction coming out of this was, oh, I'd rather go with someone more minute secure. And up until today, honestly, that probably just would have been Mascara for, safety. But now that that's obviously changed, I think the next best, in my opinion, outside of Gabriel is Ben White. And that's just, I mean, he also has threat. Like they all basically, what this showed me is that no one in Arsenal's back line is set, like except Gabriel. Like there's no one who has those consistent minutes. So if anything, maybe it points you towards Araya if you're trying to get coverage there. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting to the 60-minute sub, but I just felt like that was indicative of something that very well could happen week in and week out in the Prem.
No, I think it's a good call. Something that this is where my FPL old head memory comes in. But there was a long period of time in FPL where City was the best team. I mean, they won 3 Prems in a row. Yet very few people had them in their teams, because this game is not a one-to-one to real life. Like there's plenty of great players who don't get a lot of FPL points. Similarly, you need a lot of minutes. You need guaranteed minutes. You want guys to play 90 minutes, not 60, not get subbed at 59 and not get those bonus points. So I think that the minutes thing is going to be challenging, and Arsenal have 10 center backs on their roster now if they sign Konsa. Not all of them are healthy right now. That's my caveat. But I was talking to an Arsenal supporting fan, and from that perspective, I think it's a good move from them. Like they're building a squad, not a starting 11. That's how you compete on all fronts. That's how you compete in both cups and the Champions League and the Prem. From an FPL perspective, that makes me a little nervous.
Completely valid points. My rebuttal to Calafiori, number one, I hate that he's on this high, so maybe we should talk about, we're concerned, don't get him, please stay away from him, because I have faith in him and did far before this went above 20%. But what that was to me, they were up 3-0 by the time he got subbed. Why would you keep guys in when they're up 3-0 when you actually start the season next week? To me, that seemed actually an okay, more positive thing. More than that, that's really all I'm asking for out of him. Get me to 60 minutes, have the chance at the clean sheet. There were times last season, I mean, don't get me wrong, Arsenal got 19 clean sheets, which is ridiculous. But there were times where someone got subbed off and I kept the clean sheet and other defenders lost the clean sheet because of it.
Sure.
So I'm not as scared about that when Calafiori has the attacking threat and the run-in threat that he has. And to be honest with you, I'm bringing him in. My intention right now is just for the first couple game weeks, because once Timber gets back and Saliba's back there, it becomes even more hazy and concerning. So there's a lot of reason to say we're concerned about who to pick back there. Ben White is an interesting shout. He just hasn't done enough for me to say that's who I want at 5.5 now when I can go to Calafiori, who excites me with the way he's playing.
Yeah, fair. I think, again, touching on these four, I built this graphic last night. Obviously, everything got shaken up today. I think that's probably like the last thing we can talk about before actually jumping into the player list. Is just how does Ezri Konsa factor into this, right? Is that somebody that you guys are tempted? I mean, he's going to be a template player at some point, a 4.5 Arsenal defender. Like everybody's going to have him at some point. I think it's really the question of when does he come in, how consistent are his minutes, and what have you. But how does that refactor your guys' thinking about building out a backline in the game with regards to Arsenal?
So I don't want to spoil my draft too much, but I think it's purely a minutes question because I think Mosquera was a lock because he had no competition because he was injured. Yeah. Now he has competition, and Konsa's ownership today has shot through the roof because he's going to go to Arsenal. But I'm a little, maybe you guys are more informed on this. I genuinely just don't know. I'm a little surprised about that because I don't think that means he's like an insta lock. Like the Prem starts in 2 days. The Prem starts in 2 days. Like I don't know how he's going to learn that system, or if Arteta's just going to plug him in over a guy like Mosquera. So,
but do you think that so let's fast forward to game week 6. Who do you think is starting?
God, that's the thing. I don't know how long is Saliba out, because what's weird is it's like Konsa or Mosquera could be the third choice right center back. Like they have that much depth. All three of those guys are good. Like I think Saliba's injury is more long term. If there's any Arsenal fans, like feel free to correct me.
Yeah, I think it's like December or something is when they're thinking about him back.
But they could just as easily rotate them. I doubt we'll see some of that at the beginning of the season because there's no real reason to rotate the guys as much. Like the cups haven't started yet. I don't know.
I think
really challenging.
100%. I think it is. I think by the time it's game week, I'm going to say game week 4, call it game week 5, anywhere in that first high single-digit chunk, anyone outside of Gabriel becomes a risk to own, and you better have a wide back line that you can plug in and shift around. When I say wide, just a lot of options that you can play back there and not really a dead spot, because we don't know, and we're not going to know, and it's going to get frustrating. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you right now, my intention, like I said, I have Calafiori in there. I have a theoretical strategy that involves me essentially getting multiple wildcards because I'm going to get rid of Haaland, free up a lot of cap in doing so, and bring in Gabriel. And like
multiple wildcards. Listen to this fucking guy.
You're never gonna have more than 2 free transfers, dude. How are you gonna have multiple wildcards?
Hey, I'm gonna roll my first 3 weeks. Just you wait. No, but I do think if you're gonna be in Arsenal's defense going outside of game week 3, you're gonna want to have Raya and then Gabriel. And other than that, it's a risk.
See, I guess I fall on the different end of the spectrum of this. Like Mac, when I asked you, I thought that was gonna be like, oh yeah, Konsa starts. Like Konsa's the starting center back for England. Like I think, I mean, maybe I'm putting too much stock in that, right? But like I would think that he would beat out Mosquera hand and fist for that position. Obviously, both Konsa and Mosquera can also play right back, and so therefore that threatens Ben White's minutes as well, which is shitty for somebody who was going that direction, because I was like, cool. Now, I mean, everybody's under threat. So to that point, if we could fast forward to game week 4 and like just start the game week 1 drafts right there, like I would just put Konsa on my team right now. I don't even care if I've seen a lineup. Like I would just be like, Konsa's in my team, because he's 4.5 away into Arsenal's defense. Like I think everyone will have him genuinely. I think we will all 3 have him by, game week, whatever. I think he's a way better entrant than, any one of these guys just for the price. So anyway, that's my perspective on it. The problem is Arsenal plays Coventry in week 1. So if you really want to capitalize on that, I don't think he plays week 1, probably. Who's to say? But like, to your point, Mac, he hasn't had any time with the team. I'd be really surprised if Arteta starts him on Saturday or Sunday or whatever it is. So if you want to capitalize on probably the best fixture that they're going to have for the first like 10 weeks or whatever, you have to get one of these guys. So I think that's where I'm at. But as far as people going for it and like putting Konsa on their bench, I don't hate that strategy at all. As long as you're okay with giving up on that Coventry first game, like I think that's fine.
I mean, so he fills into the Saliba spot theoretically, right? Like let's say he beats Mosquera out, he's starting game week 3 on.
Yeah.
Okay. He averaged 7 DEFCONs per game last year and had minimal goal threat. Like I don't see that as a high value FPL play. If you're gonna go for a clean sheet, like take Raya and take someone that could actually do something else for you.
I think you have to I think when you're thinking of DEFCONs, it's less about the player than it is the team and like the goal threat too. Like Arsenal's set piece FC, obviously it's going to Gabriel. We all know that. But like at the same time, plenty of these guys have scored just from set piece corners, getting ahead on something. So like, I don't think that Konsa, you look at his DEFCONs from Villa, because the thing is at Villa, none of the defenders DEFCONed. It wasn't
I'm quoting Saliba's DEFCONs. Like he didn't get
Yeah, Saliba didn't get any, and so that's a great point.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna pick a 4.5 guy that might play, might not play, and
Sure.
there's no upside.
And the thing is, Arsenal plays
sorry,
very heavy possession, so it's like their whole thing is ball control. And what we saw last year is the teams that are less controlled generate more DEFCONs for their center backs. So I almost don't know, like outside of Gabriel, if we're really looking at a lot of these Arsenal guys as DEFCON guys, because Gabriel is the only guy in this entire back line who really got DEFCONs at all last season. The threat for them was that their set pieces were so nuts and their center backs are massive that they could get goals. Like, so it was almost it was a clean sheet 50% of the time plus a goal upside versus DEFCONs.
See, but I think that's what I'm getting at, is like when I think Arsenal defender, I don't think about DEFCONs and that type of stuff, obviously, unless it's Gabriel. Like that's a different story. But other than that, when I'm getting Raya in last year and we're doubling up on Arsenal defense, like it's not because I'm thinking he's going to get bonus or some shit. It's because he's an auto 6 points for a clean. So if you're telling me I can have a 4.5 million defender that has an auto as much as Arsenal is an auto for clean sheets, I'll go there. But regardless, point is, it doesn't sound like any of us are tempted to go with him in week 1. It definitely hurts the minutes of pretty much everybody up here. I think Calafiori's are probably the same as whatever they were going to be. But otherwise, I think Ben White and Mosquera, it makes their minutes worse. So it's just worth noting, Arsenal defense, it just gets trickier.
So that might be a great segue into the player thing, because I have some thoughts, but it's inclusive of Raya.
Yep. Let's start there then. We put this together just to kind of talk through what are our favorite players at each position and price point. We can start with keepers. Like Raya is obviously the guy at 6. Then you have Pickford at 5.5. Looks like, so we put these together of players that we're actually considering. It doesn't look like we have hardly anybody on here. I think the only guy missing from this list that I've toyed with in a couple drafts is Lamens, which I can explain later, but I still think this group is probably the better set. But I think the Raya versus no Raya, I'm curious to hear what you think on that, Mac.
So real quick on Lemons, I've been considering him too, but only in the context of if
fucking
I
Lemonhead.
I know, Lemons. I've only been considering Lemons in the context of if I bench boost in the wild card early, because the fixtures are so easy. Beyond that, I don't know if I know enough about the Manchester United defense, because we just had a 10-minute will they, won't they on the Arsenal defense. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, should I just pull the trigger on having Raya as one of my ways into the Arsenal defense who's guaranteed minutes?
Yeah.
Because I was originally on the Verbruggen-Kinski rotation, which seems to be a very popular strategy. And I'm not really one to dump a lot of money into my goalkeepers generally. Like, I like to have as little money as possible back there, because when you look at the spread between, the top scoring keeper and the bottom scoring keeper, it's like 30 points. But I've been having this debate of like, okay, if we don't know who Arsenal's going to play, and there's so much uncertainty, but we think they're going to get cleans, maybe I should just go for the most secure guy minutes-wise, and that's Raya. So maybe then for me, that's turning me more onto Raya, whereas in isolation, because of his price, I wouldn't generally be. Sharpe, I saw you making a face about me saying I don't like expensive goalies.
Did you not have Raya like all last season when I told you to not?
Yeah, because it was the best defense in the league. I've been playing for 9 seasons, and you've seen 2 of them.
Hey, what have you done for me lately?
I
Well,
taught you
Sharpe,
how not to throw last year.
So I ironically, and I think pretty much all of last year, I was on the rotation train. Like, I think I loved the bug, and I was moving around my 4.5 and 4 million goalies as best I could. I spent a lot of time in the preseason looking at that. If you look at Verbruggen and you look at Kinski, you can get through the first, I believe it's 8 game weeks with a fantastic fixture between the two of them. And if you're looking for an early bench boost in game week 1, they both have good enough fixtures where I feel like they have a chance at a clean sheet. We talk about Arsenal. I'm gonna go against what I am currently in my team. We talk about Arsenal as auto cleans. They were still only a 50-50 chance, which, don't get me wrong, is still at minimum 3 games better than anyone else in the Prem last year. So it's still very solid. Mack, to your point, Raya put up 162 points last year, and Verbruggen put up 130. Like, 32 points across 1.5 million is that worth it? All of that being said, because of what we just talked about with Arsenal, and because I am looking at this team as a early season team, and I think I'm gonna have like a soon enough chance to change a lot of things, I've now put Raya in there, and I've actually kept Kinski in there as well. And the intention behind that is that I can put Raya in day out if for some reason they have a really tough game or I don't have confidence in Raya. I don't know why that would happen, but I still have a decent enough goalie to put in there and feel confident about in Kinski. Outside of these guys, I know people are talking the 5 mil with the early games. I think you have 3 total strategies. It's Raya, it's rotating Verbruggen, Kinski, or Petrovic, or it's putting Kinski and Dubravka back there and just going real cheap and just relying on Tottenham week in, week out.
Yeah, for context, for those who know, Dubravka is the Tottenham backup keeper priced at 4 million. What I find interesting is that we've completely skipped over Pickford despite him being on the list. Does any 3 of us strongly considering him? Because he's a perennial top pick for goalkeepers.
So for me, up until this morning, I actually made the switch, but I'll talk about this when I get to my draft. But up until this morning, I was on just put a dead spot 4.0 and a Pickford. And I like Pickford just because of the early fixtures. Everton has really great fixtures. To your point, he's a solid keeper, always gets good points, easy peasy. Like, I think him and Raya are really the only premiums that I would think of. As you guys know from the team pod, I talked about how I'm anti 5 million keepers, but I've also started to turn my thought process on that. To your point, Sharpe, I think it's really just more about like what's the best rotation. And I'm going to be like, I mean absolutely no shade when I say this, Mac, but I am so not sold on Tottenham. Like, I think that to me is being a little bit overstated of people going that direction with Kinski. I'm like, I wouldn't trust Tottenham. You know, it's the same as like putting a 4.5 million like Leeds keeper in there or something. I have that much confidence in that group to keep cleans with just how much turnover there is, right? There's no consistency in the defense. Everything is new in that squad. I don't feel like there's a lot to tell me that they're going to do significantly better than they did last season. And again, I mean, this was absolutely no disrespect. I'm just saying in the sense of like, I think when I was looking at the Verbruggen-Kinski rotation, I was just like, I don't want to play a Tottenham goalie. Like, at the end of the day, you're right of like goalies are goalies and it's not that big a deal. But I will say, like, to your point, Sharpe, of, it's only 30 points between keepers. Like, 30 points is a lot. That's Gabriel down to the next best scoring defender, and he's 8 mil. And the next best scoring defender was Gahey, and he's 5.5. Like, That's a pretty significant margin. And if it's like truly 50% clean sheets, even if you're just getting the cleans, no bonus, no nothing on top, that's 3 points a week, like that's on average an extra 3 points you're getting every week. So I think there's definitely value in going the Raya train. And I think all the points that you made, Mac, coming off of the uncertainty of this backline of why to go Raya makes a lot of sense to me. For me personally, I just haven't found the extra 0.5 to get there. But yeah, we can. I can talk more my specific goalie thoughts when I show my draft, but yeah.
I guess I'm surprised. I know we say all the good things about Pickford as a player and everything. Tarkowski back there, solid. Love that. Kelleher and Royce both outscored him last year. They're 0.5 cheaper, and Kelleher has a pretty solid starting opening line. And I know we didn't put him in here because I was never even in this strategy of the 5.5 mil.
No.
But if you're looking at Pickford, why would you not just save $0.5 mil?
I have to agree with that. I think the thing is with Pickford too is, for those who haven't played before, goalies basically get points off of two things: clean sheets or getting a lot of saves. And that means either they play on a really good team and they do nothing, and that's how Raya got all his points, because he would just get clean sheets and then get his 90-minute bonus points because he was playing the entire game. Or Pickford, or like Petrovic from Bournemouth, who just had to make a ton of saves. I think Kinski is going to fall in the ton of saves one from the preseason pod. I also think Verbruggen is. From the preseason pod last week, if you remember me presenting on Kinski, I don't take any offense to you not being convinced by the Tottenham defense, Luke, because I have similar fears. Because De Zerbi plays such an aggressive... C-Rod, you were my friend. Fuck you.
No. He's siding with you. He's saying.
Never mind. I can't read. All right, I'm illiterate. That's a Spurs fan.
I was going to say he's defending Tottenham more than you.
Usually that's reserved for Arsenal fans. The illiteracy, but yeah, I just think that Kinski, I think there's a legitimate chance that Tottenham give up a lot of goals, and because De Zerbi tends to play like we will concede one, but we'll score two or three, like that, and goalies mainly get their points through clean sheets. So
yep, we can move on after this because we've spent too much time on goalies.
Yeah.
The reason my push for Pickford, the reason I went there in the first place, is just because their starting 6 fixtures are unreal. It's Palace, Bournemouth, United is the worst one, and then Tottenham, Ipswich, Hull. So it's more about trying to capitalize on a good keeper with good fixtures is what my thought process was. But it's basically what I've come to is that, okay, I was spending 5.5 for Pickford and then dead spotting a 4.0. And then I was like, well, shit, if I'm willing to spend 9.5, then I could just do a 5 and a 4.5 in Verbruggen and rotate and get really good fixtures. And so to the point of I could just do 2 4.5s and spend the 0.5 elsewhere. Yes. But for me, it was that Lemonhead has 2 great fixtures to start the season, 2 that I see as pretty bankable clean sheets. But anyway.
Last thing I'll say on keepers. The other thing that's different this year than last year, and we got to remember that the context shifts, is that there isn't a playing 4.0 million keeper this year. And so
not yet.
The risk you run when you take the Kinski-Dubravka combo is if a lot of people bring him in and then start transferring Dubravka out, because there's a lot of casuals in this game, and you got to play around the casuals too, especially in the early part of the season. And his price shoots down, you're going to lose team value, even if it's objectively a good pick.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the defenders. No one likes goalies anyways.
Yeah. So starting off at the just easy with the 4 million bracket, Mac, I put in Van Uwijk here after you did your analysis of the Coventry group. I think the only other Coventry guy that I'm considering is Thomas, who's the center back. Because you did that research, remind us why are you more pro Van Uwijk than Thomas there?
Yeah, to be honest.
And do you have a preference at this 4.0 price?
My exact logic is escaping me. It's hard to believe that was only a week ago. But the thing is with Van Uwijk is he was just extremely involved in the attack. He is their left back, if I recall. It might be the right back. Shows how much I know, even though I literally dove in to that for 4 hours last week. The thing is with Van Uwijk, if you're picking him, you're not picking him for clean sheets. You're picking him for the possibility of maybe a return against the really shitty team that we all expect Hull to be in game week 2, and you're probably bench boosting. Or you just want a most likely playing 4.0 mid dead spot defender from one of the better promoted teams. He's probably, the pro for him is he's probably one of the cheaper, higher upside guys because he might get a goal occasionally. and then you're probably targeting that whole fixture.
Yep. Sharpe, do you have a favorite at the 4 mil price point?
Not to give a, I mean, if I had to pick, I'm looking at Van Uyek there. Same reason you just said, but it's more just
Cool.
like he's a playing 4 mil. Like find a playing 4 mil that if you're in the worst.
Yeah, that's
spot
fine.
ever,
You're probably never going to play him. Yeah, exactly. It's but if you are bench boosting, I think it makes some difference, right? Like I don't have that plan, so I don't necessarily have that in the back of my mind, but it definitely makes a difference. 4.5s. There are a couple of Brighton guys here. Those are ones that I put in after doing the analysis on that team. I will note, like I mentioned this, but in preseason, it's been even more true. I think he scored the last time he played is De Kuiper. He's playing mid. So out of position. Kadioglu is also just like good value at his price. But I think if I was going to go somewhere, that's where I would go. Curious what you guys like from this group.
If I were going here, and I might be biased because I did the research on Brentford this season, I'd go Azure because he had 9.6 DEFCONs per game last year, and he's now actually locked in there with Rico Henry being out for a while. So I would feel very confident about both his minutes and his ability to get DEFCONs, and I don't think Brentford all of a sudden is going to be a great overall team. Like, I think they're going to be okay, so I think he's still going to have a lot of opportunities for the ball to come at him and him to get those DEFCON points.
Yeah,
we're all going to have this bias from which teams we looked into, aren't we? Just like all year.
To be fair, Azure was like, he's been all over everywhere. Like, this is not, I'm not new to this information.
So, spoiler alert, I feel like maybe we should put like our faces really small next to the players who are in our drafts because Azure is in my draft. And for me, when I go through these guys, I think that Luke, you said it best earlier. You're probably looking for like good teams. And so De Cooper and Kadioglu both play for Brighton. Haven plays for Manchester United. Robinson, I assume that's Fulham Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Obviously there's Shaw, and then Ayer is Brentford. The pro for like a Shaw or somebody is that the fixtures are really easy, but Shaw also played a ton of games last year and had terrible points. So like I really have no incentive to go and pick a Shaw. I don't know anything about Fulham this year because they have some uncertainty. So if it's between the De Coopers and the Kadiaglus or the Ayers of the world, I'm probably just leaning towards Ayer because I think that he gets that, because he has high DEFCONs, he's more likely to get that 4-point floor that I want out of my budget guy. And that's the sole reason he's in my draft. Like I think I need a budget guy, and I'm just looking for maximum upside or consistency for when on the odd game that I have to play him. Maybe he can just get me 4 points, and I can say that's totally fine for a week.
Yeah, I feel like you could say this at every price point, but it feels like when you jump from 4.5 to 5, the jump is just so significant. So this is obviously where we have the most names listed. It seems like that's the most value, and there's a lot of interest in there. Only one to remove from this is Fofana. I think I had him in there, but he is suspended in the first week, so that's a my bad. That's a my bad. But yeah, talk me through like Mack. I guess you can start. Who's your favorite pick from the 5 mil group? I think Sharpe, when we get to you, can put some work together on some of these different guys. But
yeah, another spoiler alert: the 5 million defender I have is Van Heck. And that is because currently the way and this is so subject to change, I'm going to be such a liar, but Van Heck got a lot of DEFCONs last year. He was really solid for a Brighton team. And for the same reasons, Luke, that I'm not that convinced about Spurs, or I'm just nervous about the Spurs defense, I want to weigh into them without having to commit to them. And so if I take Raya like I'm planning to, that allows me to have a Van Heck and play him on the occasional game without having to double up if I have a Kinski and a Raya. So if I go Kinski and I go Verbugen, then I think I would probably not be as interested in Van Heck because I want one Spurs defender until we see how they start.
Yep.
I am going to start this off by defending Spurs. And the reason for that
everybody's doing it but me today, apparently.
It's because I got to watch the Netherlands play and I enjoyed that, so I'm gonna acknowledge a bias there. But you have a back line of Van de Ven, who as an individual player looks very, very good. You have Van Heck, who was the best defender on his team last year,
and he's played under De Zerbi before.
And you have Senesi, who we're not even talking about at, I believe, a 6 mil price point. Like, he is priced higher, 5.5 at least, than these guys. And we're saying he's not even going to be one of the starters. like, I think they have a lot more depth back there, especially if Pedro Porro stays healthy. Like, you actually have a back that can do something. So I'm gonna say that I am cautiously optimistic on Tottenham. But jumping into what we're seeing here, this is, in my mind, the best 5 million defenders you could go after. And for me, I have 4 or 5 million defenders and a 5.5 in my draft right now. I'm really high on that jump between the 4.5 and the 5s.
Yep.
So pulling together here the guys that are most important. One is Ballard. I talked Sunderland in total, but they have a really, really good start to the season fixture wise. So even if we do think they're gonna fall off later, they start real hot. And Ballard at 11 DEFCONs per 90 last. What you want to say, Luke? Hit me.
I mean, they start their first 3, Ipswich, Fulham, Brentford are excellent, but then they play Arsenal and City back to back.
You don't know when I'm transferring people out. And I also, like I said, I have 4 or 5 million defenders back there. I don't need to play any of them every single game. So
Okay.
I hear you, but I'm talking. We're gonna talk 3-game chunk just because it's better for my.
It's better for your point. Yeah.
But even if that is so, and they do start giving up points, I would like to point out that he is the 3rd highest XGI goal involvement in here. He's also the highest DEFCON guy. If he's getting DEFCONs consistently, we're talking 4 floor there without the clean. So that gets me excited.
No, I love Dan Ballard, and I like genuinely wanted him so many points last season, and just couldn't justify the money when you had like Mukiele and these guys at 4-0.
Yeah.
Watching the games, he's so involved in their attack. Like he so looks to score. And so I think like I wanted to come in here tonight and have you sell me on him. But unfortunately, right before we got on, I remembered that they're playing in Europe. And I was like, oh, never mind. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't start for a few weeks, but I was like, oh, fuck,
Right.
Never mind.
Yeah, I would say you got time on that. Like to have Ballard early and have options
Yep.
to not play him every time or to get him out. Or like I said, if he still has the 4 floor, I still feel good there. Maguire's on here solely because of those first fixtures. Like, other than that, I don't think there's a reason to have him. The important thing to touch on here is with Casemiro gone, you got to think Maguire is going to be the guy they're targeting for those headers off of set pieces. And then the other piece of this that, just to throw in to make it more confusing, is that De Ligt has been seen in training, but he hasn't been fully back, so I think we still have some time there. Like, some people have brought it up that it could be a minutes risk. I think you got multiple weeks before that really becomes an issue, and by the time they're out of those fixtures, you probably don't really want Maguire anyway.
The thing
we've
is
touched-
for me with that strategy, just to jump in real quick, is that I don't really like using my transfers in the defense early, just because there's a 50% chance that we get it so wrong in the front that I want to be able to adapt up front. And so one of the only thing that makes me nervous about Manchester United, despite their fantastic fixtures, is I'm just like, I don't want to have to like transfer Maguire out in week 3 when there's a risk that maybe I need to transfer out like a João Pedro or like even a Haaland or something like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, just something to think about.
It could be if Aiden Heaven becomes consistent in that back line, he's going to be great value as a 4.5 center back. But yeah, that was just a sidebar.
No, that's so fair. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm looking at these pretty early in the season, so that's fair. I think when I'm coming at this with my mindset too is I have a very balanced back line. So we'll see that later. I'll show it. But Van Heck, I feel like we've touched on. Obviously moves teams, but has some solid goal involvement there. Just under 9 DEFCONs per 90, and in my opinion is now going to be on a better defensive team, but one that is willing to go up and down. So I think he's going to have the opportunity for DEFCONs. Mack, I'm going to lean on you and say he was one of the more locked guys in the back line, and we see Senesi and Van de Ven swapping more possibly.
It
than Van
will
Heck.
probably be, yes, the most locked guy, besides maybe Pedro Porro, because we sold Christian Romero, so
Yep.
he's certainly better than Kevin Danzo.
Yeah. Next two guys we have here. These stats are not from the Prem last season, obviously, as they were not playing there. So take that for what it is. But what is exciting about Haramovic is those DEFCONs. If you can get 10,
And the bicycle kicks.
dude, that was crazy. That was awesome. What is Leeds doing, by the way, with Rodon and
Yeah, Rodon playing
like-
as like a forward, dude. He's been charging up the entire like pitch. And so are we? So Muravan. Wow, I cannot believe you pronounced that correctly, and I can't. Sharpe. What world are we in? However you say that Vich name, Are we overlooking Joe Rodon? Like it seems like Maremovic is the sweetheart of FPL Twitter right now because he's getting a ton of DEFCONs and scored an insane bicycle kick. But Joe Rodon was like a stalwart in most of our teams last year until he got injured because he was getting so many DEFCONs, and he's half a mil cheaper. Are you willing to make that leap?
I think that is what you start seeing a lot of those people with 2 days left going back and forth on when they want to save half a mil. For me, I would stick with Mahrimovic because I think he is going to eat up those DEFCONs. Like I think they're going to start coming to him, especially as we talk about Rodon playing a lot further forward. I don't know how much his last season is going to transfer over to this season. You almost look at him as attacking threat, I think, versus DEFCONs, and I don't think you look at Leeds as a clean sheet option in total. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
I think the better question from a Leeds perspective is, Sharpe, where's your B-hole?
So yeah, I mean, I actually got to go back to my research. So give me like half a second because I'd already pulled it up when we were talking Brentford. But valid call out, as he also had 10.6 DEFCONs per last year. But at that 5 mil, I think I'm falling for Mahrimovic. I think if you're looking at the 5 mil, I'm gonna keep saying it just for fun. I'm loving him at that 5 mil. I think he is now going to be looked at as a leader. I think he's going to come into the Prem and kind of eat it up back there. And so to me, he's the go-to, and you're not getting anything cheaper by going to B-hole.
Love it. I just needed to hear you say it. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay. He's a great call. I mean, when you have over 10 DEFCONs per 90, that's still pretty nice. Moving down the list here, we move on to Jeremy Jacquet. As a Liverpool fan, I would caution you against him, despite how optimistic he looked in the beginning. Last year in play, he did not have a single goal or assist. He had 0.03 expected assists, so excuse me on that, but never having put one in. And everyone got excited for his goal on Sunday. I will tell you, Van Dijk headed that ball 4 times off the corner, and it randomly fell to Gakpo's feet, and Jacquet just happened to be the dude in front of the net. Like, there was no... He's going to be amazing. He looked great as a defender. He has an opportunity to maybe up those DEFCON numbers, but next to Van Dijk, you have to expect that he's going to get the majority of those. So for me right now, coupled with the fact we brought in Arejo, I don't see the upside in Jacquet until he proves me wrong. I could, in 4 weeks, I hope I'm eating my words and he's proven himself to be fantastic as an FPL asset. I don't see that right now. I think he's going to be a very good complementary center back to Van Dijk in real life.
Yes, agreed. Last thing I'll say on this real quickly, and I'm just trying to wrap up this section so we can get moving a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm a little lower on Richards, just because Glasner left and he made them a really defensively solid team. I assume this is Crystal Palace Richards.
Yes, yeah.
He was a DEFCON monster last year, but they have a new coach, and I think they're going to be playing a lot more direct. So while there might be a similar amount of DEFCONs, I'm a little worried about their defensive stability. And then what Williams is this at the bottom? Is that Neco Williams from Forest? Yeah. I'm high on him, but for me it's a wait and see, just because we got to see how long it takes for the Glasner imprint to be made, because there's a potential that he's like the new Lacroix from last year, right? But we'll just have to see how it goes.
Feels like that was an intentional pun, but we'll move on. All right. So yeah, let's just move on from the 5.0 guys then. Thank you, Sharpe. That was very thorough. I think the only player that wasn't on there that I'm thinking about is Colwill, just as a cheap entrant into the Chelsea defense. But that's really more for exposure than it is him as a player. Chelsea are not very good at DEFCONs. So I think there's definitely some better picks potentially. Okay, 5.5 mil defenders. So we touched on the Arsenal guys, but I think you've got a couple of the Forest guys here, as well as Gvardiol. Did Gvardiol get booted out of your guys' teams after the Community Shield? Is that kind of the vibe?
He's never been in it. For the same reason that Sharpe has like a bunch of 5 mils, I have a bunch of 5 mils. I just think you unlock so much with those 5 mil guys that I'm not as interested in sticking quite as much money into my defense as Gvardiol requires. And if I did, I think that to Sharpe's point, I would probably go for like an O'Reilly. So if I was going to spring for a City defense, I'd want one of them. I'd probably go for the premium option.
Yep. Heard. I think similar to, like, I don't know, it's really interesting to me, like the 5 to 5.5, it's like you're getting a better team, but you're almost always getting a player with more minutes risk. Like you're looking at Muharemovic and okay, yeah, he's going to play every week in theory. I don't know. But like in theory, a lot of these guys are a lot more locked than the guys are at 5.5, where they're a deeper team that plays in Europe and has rotation. So anyway, I think that's interesting. All right, let's talk premium defenders. Who do you like on this list, if anyone? I am curious.
I don't have any of them in my draft to start the season.
Same.
I think if you are picking someone off there, I would lean Tarkowski. He at least appeared in my draft at some point in this preseason, and the reason for that is DEFCON at the end of and middle of last season, he was still getting a lot of header opportunities. They were just going slightly wide. Like he was there, so you still have that threat with him. And again, like I said, a lot of DEFCON opportunities, and I don't think that's different for Van Dijk. And until Liverpool prove they can play defense, which I don't expect, you're not getting an upgrade and a clean sheet there. So stick with the 6 mil Tark, I believe.
Yeah, I think my opinions on Tark is he was also in my draft at one point, but Everton is a team that you should be targeting for budget picks, and I just think that he's now too expensive for the price. Like, I think that I'm trying to have an open mind going into this season and say, who is that next cheap DEFCON guy that is going to outperform his points? I think that Tark is now appropriately priced to his performance last year, but he plays for Everton, and they just don't clean a lot, and therefore I am thinking that he will still be just as good of a pick as last year, but it becomes harder to justify when you're running up a Tarkowski against like a Van Dijk, for instance, or like a more premium City option if there's a 6.0 City mid.
Yeah, I didn't have O'Reilly listed here, but I think that's probably who you'd want to go to. I do want to shout out Lacroix. Like that's somebody who I've been thinking of. The big negative with him, I would say, is just that he went deep in the World Cup. So he may have some slightly minimized minutes in the first few weeks. But honestly, considering how integral he's going to be to their team, I'd be surprised if he didn't start going forward.
He might be a monster. So as a reminder, I did the Chelsea preseason research. And of all of the guys I presented on, I think with the addition of Xabi Alonso, he's one of the guys who stands to benefit the most. Not that he was on Chelsea last year, but he's just proven that he's excellent in the role that I expect Xabi Alonso to use him at. The thing is with Chelsea assets is you just don't have to jump on them in week 1. So I think that everyone probably wants to start moving on to the Chelsea assets by week 4. And he is very high on my watch list. I just don't think I'm going to start with him.
I think to your point though, Mac, like you were like, I don't want to make the transfers early in defense. I'm trying to think ahead in that sense of everybody, to your point, week 4 is going to hit. Everybody's going to be like, oh shit, I need a Chelsea player. That's why I'm trying to get the coverage. Obviously we all have João Pedro, but I'd like to have somebody else, whether that's a mid or a defender, but I'm trying to kind of think ahead and say for week 4, how do I get that? Obviously, it's worth noting in that sense, like Chips 4 is also a good opportunity to think about that free hit because you have the Manchester Derby and then, you can get Chelsea assets in for a really nice matchup and then you don't have to worry about it. But I think their run goes for a while there after that, assuming you're not, planning a wild card around then. Like Chelsea have really great fixtures in the first 8 weeks of the season. They're top of the ticker for the first 8.
They are. And so, I think that is a totally valid strategy. Like if you think that the cost of the transfer outweighs the maybe like 1 or 2 points that you're gonna have to sacrifice by maybe having him and playing him early, or you can just create a team where you don't have to play him and then not make that transfer later. That's a great strategy, and that's honestly something that I should probably be considering more, considering I am not intending on doing that early wild card.
I will say I lied there. I had specifically removed game week 3. So that really is the reason why I think if they didn't have Arsenal in 3, everybody would be looking at bringing in a Chelsea player, because otherwise then it's Fulham, Brighton, Hull, Brentford, the list goes on of just like really good fixtures. But that is, part of what you're getting. Like with a Lacroix, it's like, okay, I'm getting a 6 mil defender and then I'm going to bench him in a week, and that's hard to swallow.
I think you bench anybody against Arsenal, and as long as you come up with a rotational plan to basically prevent playing that fixture, then you're fine. So I think it's a great point. I hadn't considered bringing him in early, to be honest, but I maybe should now.
All right, let's jump into the mids. So budget guys. Obviously, it looks like the only guy we have listed here at 5. Oh no, it's Gomez, Norgard. Is Ampadu 5 or is he 5.5? I think he's 5.5.
Yeah.
So we just have Gomez and Norgard listed here at the 5s. I think I would also add Sangare from Forest in there. It just seems like he's going to be a good, again, somebody I researched, so I'm super surprised.
But from Brentford.
Yeah, but I think he's 5.5.
He is. Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, at the 5.0, it seems like Gomez is a good standout. Like when I was doing the Brighton guys, I identified like any of these mids could pop off, and he's a starting 5.0 who's going to play a good amount of minutes and could be one of those guys. And at 5, you're fine to gamble on it, I think. Norgard, I'm not sure is going to start. So I actually think I might remove him from this list and probably put in place Sangare from Forest.
I think you should remove Norgard because there was a possibility. I think he started, and then they signed Bruno G.
Yeah,
like chronologically is right, and then he's under the there's Rice, Odegaard, Bruno G, like Norgard's like way lower because Odegaard subbed out for Bruno G in the Community Shield. Whether they intend to play him or not, there, I think that's what I saw. Timeout.
Norgard's on Everton now, but
I'm an idiot. That's right.
No, you're good. You're good.
There. Sorry, but
the same thing. He didn't play over the weekend in their most recent friendly, so I think he could be a non-starter. Among the 5.5s, what seems like the Twitter darling is Gross. I think the whole penalty thing is being a little overstated there. Like, I don't really care how much he's got penalties, like Jesus Christ, but it's that he's on set pieces and he corners mainly, and that he looks like somebody who's going to start consistently. And Brighton have pretty good fixtures to start. I think the only thing to remind you guys from the Brighton stuff is that they do have a European game on the Thursday before their first game. And Gross is old. So like if you were planning on starting him game week 1, I'd maybe refactor that. But I think going forward, he'll be fine. It's just a weird, like any Brighton pick, I'd be hesitant about starting in game week 1.
Was there an injury to one of Gross or Gomez? I feel like I saw something related to that, but I can't remember who.
Well, they just sold Baliba, right? So that just freed both of them up, I believe. To like say there'll be locks. I don't know. Do a quick research on that because I have a take on.
I didn't see anything, but
okay.
I feel like I'm maybe hallucinating.
Yeah, that's possible. But looking at the other ones that are there, Ampadu sticks out to me because he had over 11 DEFCONs per 90. So when you're looking at those,
and Leeds have great fixtures too.
And Leeds have great fixtures. So when you're looking again at cheap guys, you're looking at guys that have a higher floor than they do really, I think, potential. At least that's what I typically try to do. So I look at Ampadu there as a 4-floor opportunity. Again, we already touched on Brighton, Kovacic. Whew, he looks so bad. Like,
so let me pitch this one. I
don't even care if you're playing on City. How bad he looked pained me. The clip of him sending the pass out of bounds to no one. Like, what are we doing?
Fair enough. But here's the thought process there is like, I just don't think you can scoff at a 5.5 potentially starting midfielder for City. Like, I don't think you can. And the reality is Rodri gone. Who's picking up the DEFCONs in the midfield, right? Is it Anderson or is it Kovacic? And I don't think we know the answer. And at like 5.5, I'm willing to gamble on it, So I think for me personally, at 5.5, my favorite is Gross, just because he is a little bit more locked and has a little bit more certainty in his involvement. But to your point, if you wanted to go kind of the DEFCON side with maybe the upside of just being on a good team, like undoubtedly he's going to assist Haaland. If he continues to start, undoubtedly he'll assist Haaland at some point. Like, so he has some. I hear you on scoffing on him as a player, but it's not really. It's more just like you're getting a 5.5 mil mid for City. That's really all it is.
I respect him as a player, but he was old when he went to City, and the fact that he's still like starting for them is crazy. Also, I would be really interested in if Enzo went to City from Chelsea. Yeah. I feel like then that might. I doubt that's going to happen. Chelsea want a ridiculous amount of money for him, justifiably.
That's a good point.
But just if that somehow happens at the end of the transfer window, maybe after game week 1 or something, then I think that can blow that open. So because that's on the table and I'm a little worried about like just his minutes in general, I'm not probably going to go there. Like I'm going really heavily for minute security.
Yeah. All right. 6 to 6.5. We've talked a lot about Solis. Is it safe to say, Sharpe, that that's your favorite pick at that price?
Oh, hands down.
Undoubtedly.
It's really not even close. He excites me. I think Harry Wilson obviously had a great season last season. My problem with Harry Wilson is that all of a sudden I'm tripled up on Leeds real fast with the players that I have in my team. And while they have good fixtures and I believe they're going to be better than they were last year, I need to pump the brakes on that one. So for that, I just think there's better Leeds players than Wilson. And so, Solis is my go-to.
Sorry to add to that. I also target the budget teams for like their floor. Like I'm going for best budget teams for highest floor, not goals, because the budget teams in quotes, and even though Leeds might have a great year, they're just a little more inconsistent in the scoring. And Wilson is not someone who's going to get DEFCONs, therefore his floor is not as high. And I think if I don't quite remember the stats off the top of my head, but I'm like fairly positive that Dewsbury Hall from Everton outscored Wilson last season, and that was just because he was chipping away at those 4.0, those 4 floor points everywhere. So it's not sexy, but Wilson never entered my team once, and in game week 36, I was touching 100K, and I never had him once in the season. So
I think the encouraging thing for me though with Wilson, like here we can show this really quick. He was an absolute overperformer last season, for sure. But he's playing up top right now with Leeds, and so that entices me, right? If you're enticed by a DCL, I think you should be just as enticed by Wilson. I think the reason everybody's going DCL is because less forward options, 1, and 2, he's $500,000 cheaper. So it makes sense to go there. But like to the point of doubling up on these guys, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. Like they do have really great fixtures to start. I hear you though, like doubling up on the Leeds attack probably isn't the most ridiculous thing.
I'm not scoffing on it. This is another situation where I would say if you're going to wild card in 4 and you're committed to that, I would absolutely look at that high upside. It's just that I'm not committed to that. Therefore, I don't want to have a long-term, like spoiler alert, I have DCL as my budget forward in my team right now. Therefore, I don't want to have a long-term reliance on 2 scoring. I know, a revelation right here. But I don't want to have a long-term reliance on 2 Leeds players to score, and I think that there will be an interaction with Wilson anyways. Or like DCL. Like he might assist Wilson.
Yeah, I think on this graph, I also want to touch on Dewsbury Hall. He's probably my favorite pick at this bracket. We can talk about Solis. Like, okay, let me say on Solis, I'm as encouraged as you guys are. He's in my draft right now, so it's not that. It's just I am a little worried that we're getting, it's a trap. Like we're getting cooked a little bit because it's Wirtz, it's Gyökeres. It's like I'm just feeling burned from last year. I literally looked up last year all the new arrivals and how well they did, and I had to be reminded that Voltemade exists. Like that players, the Ekitike exists, but like
but Voltemade had a crazy pen once, therefore he's still cool.
Right. But no, I just mean like there were players who did well last season who came in, but I had a hard rule for myself before going into the season of like, do not bring anyone in who's new to the Prem. Yes. And so I worry about that with Solis, but that's neither here nor there. That's probably more in my head than anything. But on KDH, like he certainly overperformed last season in here, as you can see, like with the XG. I think I'm, 1, I love Everton's fixtures to start, but then 2, I'm a little bit like endeared to him in the sense that I watched a lot of those Everton games last year, and I think him overperforming these metrics I'm sure the XG will come down a little bit, but I don't think him overperforming these metrics is one of those, like, it's an outlier thing. I think these graphs in general, right? How do you want to look at this? You could look at it a few different ways, right? Are the guys in red due, or are the guys in green guys who overperform or like, took their chances and finished better and what have you. And I think you could take that either way. But in KDH's case, he whips in a ton of balls. He's like on all the set pieces. He just has a lot of routes to points, and he gets the occasional DEFCON. Like he probably averages like 8 a game or something. So I think for 6.5, like at that price bracket, he seems like the best value to me. My second favorite is probably Dango, just because I think, he's going to get a lot of action at Brentford.
I don't agree with the Dango shout. I had him last year, and it was a painful existence. I got him in on a wild card and capitalized on his like only goal, and then transferred him out immediately, and that was perfect because he didn't do anything for the rest of the season. And I think I transferred him in at like 24, and there was like very minimal returns beyond that. He was inconsistent, and that's like the same argument for some reason that Sharpe has. Like both fantastic real life players, but don't seem to put up a lot of consistent FPL returns, and maybe that's a product of how Brentford plays. But I'm not super high on Dango. Going back to this list, it's like I didn't really enjoy owning the Brentford mids last year, and I certainly don't think I'm going to go there again. So, but I agree with your KDH shout. The only other thing I'll say on KDH, though, is I feel like it's the same thing as Tarkowski, where now he's like totally appropriate price because he's a fantastic player. But then if I'm like comparing like a Solis or maybe an Ndai versus a KDH, then it's like, shoot, he's a little expensive with a lower upside.
No, I mean, if Solis is starting every week, he's obviously the best pick here. I think that really is just the question. It's like, is he going to start every week? If he is, dude, fucking I don't care. But if he's going to be, because if he's filling the Belgian guy that he's coming in to fill, like if he's filling that role of coming off the bench,
Trossard.
Yeah, like if he's filling the Trossard role and he's going to come in off the bench, yeah, he scores goals, but like he's just not consistent in terms of minutes. That's what I worry about with him. But
yeah, Martinelli though has not been he wasn't in the squad for the Community Shield, but that means nothing. I hear you. I'm terrified of the Solis thing because of the minutes. This just might be one that you can either choose to play into or not based on your plans for the season. Like if you're going to start with Bruno and then you're going to free up a ton of money, you might plan to just try to take that chance and then upgrade him if it doesn't work out. But I don't disagree with any of your takes, Luke.
Sure. All right. Similar to the 5 to 5.5 defenders, I feel like jumping into once you get to the 7 mil mids, I'm like, why are they getting worse? Do you know what I mean? Like they're all like have upside, but I'm like, I'm not sure that any one of these players is going to start except Bruno on this list, obviously, and have consistent minutes. And
Semenyo, I think will start.
I mean, Verts.
Yeah, I think now that Doku's out, yeah, you're right. Verts is the one, but Verts can't score a fucking goal. Like that's the issue is that you're betting on him to. So like, okay, yeah, running through the list. Foden, don't know for sure if he's going to start, and once he's in, he's streaky as fuck. Wirtz, yes, he's got the minutes consistency, but is he going to fucking score goals? Who's to say? Bumo, there's so much competition for every position on United, and they just got another mid today. Like I don't know how they're going to fit all those guys in. And we saw at the end of last year, Bumo start to get his minutes cut a little bit in that sense.
And there's
Semenyo,
Sesko Cunha sub risk. Like
right. And Semenyo, like I think Doku being out does secure his minutes better, but he's 8.5. And like I know y'all are going to be like, oh, you just hate Semenyo. I promise it's not that. But like, I do think he's overpriced. Like, I think he's significantly overpriced because he played the vast majority of last year on a Bournemouth team where he was taking pens, he was taking free kicks, he was the guy. And now he's on City, who, yes, is a better team, but like, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to produce at that level. So, not to say he's not a good pick. I just am like, he's certainly too much. Like if he was 7.5, it'd be no question he'd be in my team. If he was 8, he'd probably be in my team. But it's the 8.5 where it's like, damn, it's really hard to find that extra half mil. Anyway, I think Semenyo is a totally fine pick. I'm not like in love with him at that price.
Semenyo has entered my draft, but I cannot agree more that he is a little overpriced because when I enter him into my draft and then I look at who I feel like I have to sacrifice to accommodate that, I'm like, wow, this is a lot. And then the other thing I want to say is when we look at like how Maresca played like a Cole Palmer, the best Cole Palmer we saw was when he was under Maresca was when he was in like the Club World Cup when Maresca just let him play free. And my fear is that he's going to make Semenyo go really wide and not use any of his strengths, which is just like really clinical finishing and like his just ability to like dart inside and score a goal. So I have some fears about the structure of Semenyo, and when you run that up against his price, I don't want to pick a premium where I have fears at all. Unless you're going no Bruno. Then it opens it up.
It does open it up. We're still not there, but theoretically you could be there. But this goes into my Semenyo versus Foden. I kind of touched on it early on. I'm afraid of exactly what you just said with Doku out. I'm actually afraid of Haaland's ability a little bit. He's still Haaland, but his numbers with Doku are a heck of a lot better than they are without Doku. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be something that certainly plays in that happened in the last couple of days. But when I'm looking at Semenyo versus a Foden to save $1.5 million, it's everything you guys just touched on with Semenyo going outside. I don't feel confident in him continuing to put the production up that he did throughout the entirety of last year. He looked really good when he got to City. I'm going to say he trailed off as we got to the end. And to be honest, like, yes, he played in the World Cup, which is sick, but, like, he didn't look that great when he was there by any means. So that just tells me that I'm still not super confident in him being the guy to go to here at the price point we're talking about. I think Foden, if he gets to play inside and he gets to play behind the striker, behind Haaland right there, open up some possibilities for some longer shots. I know he took one and it didn't look super great, but if he's locked in there, that feels
I thought it was nice.
And if Cherky gets to move to the outside with Foden being the guy inside, then at 7 mil, he just seems like the better City option there.
Yeah, if Foden does play, if Foden is like, oh shoot, you know who we left off? We have a great comment in the chat right now from Michael Roberts. We didn't put Anderson on this list. We're idiots.
I didn't. I sure didn't. I'm not considering Anderson. Like, I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure if he's going to start game week 1. Like, I really don't. And then, yeah, I mean, he didn't play his first minutes until over the weekend. Like, obviously Haaland's going to start, but like, they'll probably try to, progress him in slowly. And I also just don't think, I think the 6.5 value is great, but I don't think you can be assured that he is going to be the same DEFCON player that he was at Forest. That's why I made the point about Kovacic, is it's like I'm paying $1 million less, and he has just as much of a chance in my eyes of DEFCONing as Anderson does. So I think he's a fine pick, but really what it comes down to for me is that it's the World Cup stuff. I'm trying not to pick anybody who is in the semifinals or further of the World Cup.
Security is a very real point, but I don't know if I would spring for a Kovacic over an Anderson. I think that so spoiler alert again.
Wait, is Nico Gonzalez gone? Is that right?
I don't think he's gone. Is he gone? Is that breaking news? I'm going to go for Anderson personally, because I do want a way into the city midfield, and I just think that he is my cheapest
that's a good shout.
Wait and see option. I feel like it'll be fairly easy to upgrade him if we're proven totally wrong about a Semenyo or a Foden. It won't be hard to make that leap, and but I want a way to capitalize on some of that upside with lower risk. But I didn't consider the minutes, so thanks, because now I'm nervous.
Yeah, I don't think Nico Gonzalez is gone yet. So that is the thing to me, is the minutes. Is honestly, I see the starting lineup probably being Nico Gonzalez game week 1. But yeah, not to crap on Anderson as a pick long term, I just don't think I would start with him.
He's in my draft, so I'm planning on starting it with him, but we'll see.
Fair. All right, I feel like let's skip Bruno because we can do a him and Haaland section separately. Forwards, let's talk budget forwards. I put in Jorginho and DCL. Mack, I would assume you're the guy who put in Richarlison. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Whisper sweet nothings.
I've been thinking about DCL, and as the resident Spurs fan in the chat, one of the things that really annoys me is that we haven't signed a forward yet. We're going to start the season with the same forward line that almost got us relegated. But I was just thinking about minute security, and purely because Solanke is injured right now, that I think that forces Richarlison into the spot. And Leeds might have better fixtures, I think, to start than Spurs, but I think that Spurs might have slightly more upside than Leeds because of De Zerbi and because of the stability in the back line. And they run a lot of predetermined plays. I was watching some of the De Zerbi plays last year when he took over Spurs, and there's a lot of very clearly planned moves. So I tossed him on this list. He's not in my team right now, but he is someone I am considering and I think should be discussed if you are high on Spurs.
Is he not linked towards a move out of Spurs though? That would be my worry there, is that he gets dished.
We are absolutely trying to sell him. I think it would be good for the club. And just to be clear, I added him to the list yesterday, and then today we're linked to Marmoush. So if Marmoush comes in, that blows this whole operation wide open. And honestly, because of the Marmoush scarcity, maybe now I'm cooling off on Richarlison. So it sucks trying to make any conclusions in preseason just because everything's so uncertain.
For sure. Can you guys, obviously DCL is the template pick. 5.5, if you didn't have the money for whatever reason and you needed to go down. Is there anybody else you guys would consider outside of Jorginho?
We got a question for Strand Larson.
No.
You guys considering him even at all?
No,
I'm not.
I think you look at McBurney as a possible option there. You look at the cheap guys that may have a chance to play on those bad teams. If you really wanted to, I don't know why people are doing this, but you could make a guess on Barry versus Beto there at 5.5. I would say you just got to scrap up the money for 6, because at that price point, you obviously have DCL. If you want to go super cheap down there, you can go DCL and Broby through the first few games. I don't love him as a longevity pick, but again, with those opening fixtures, he's an option at 6 mil.
Yeah.
But it's hard to argue lower in the template forward positions, the template being DCL, JP, and Haaland. The only one that I've been able to make a case for in my head is Isak, because Ekitike's gone until at least January. So you have that, and I promise you we're not going to play Chiesa. If we do, then that's a whole other issue.
Yeah. Some other picks that I want to run through real quickly. Just so we had a question about Strand Larson. I'm not high on Strand Larson just because, I think Glasner was he's still in Palace, right? Strand Larson is.
Yeah.
Glasner, I think, made that team function, and we just have no idea how Crystal Palace is going to play. There's a Beto versus Barry comments. We got Justin asking about Beto, and then we got Michael asking about Barry. I think the question is that we just are continuously unsure about who's starting. Like,
And I think it's hot hand. Like genuinely, it's like, are they going to score? And that's what Moyes wants. So it may be that Beto is the guy to start or Barry is the guy to start, but who's to say that's going to stay long term? And yeah, at that point, like, what are we doing? Like, the reason DCL is in so many teams is because he's locked for minutes and he's cheap.
And then there was also an Iwani, which I cannot pronounce, right? God, I gotta watch one of those. Yeah, I gotta watch one of those preseason pronunciation videos again. Like 3 months off, and I'm forgetting how to pronounce everybody's names.
I think you gotta play old FIFAs, and all of a sudden you just hear the announcer spit it in your face.
Yeah.
I actually don't know where that one's coming from, just because I would think at Forest you've got Igor Jesus and Chris Wood, who are more likely to start than him, right? Am I tripping, or did he get transferred somewhere?
If I recall, I think that the thought with Iwani is that he's gonna.
Oh, he's on Coventry. Never mind. He's on Coventry.
The other thing about Coventry is when we did our team selection thing last year, and we're talking about just all around guys. I said Haji Wright would probably be like my budget promoted team guy to go. Well, he's now injured, so if you want to dead end the forward spot and you're not convinced about spending the money required to go JP, Haaland, and DCL, and you want to drop down, you could save $1 million by going, I think, Thomas Asante. He's a 5.0 Coventry starting player, and he'll play Hull in game week 2. So
that's the point.
And at 5
is the one that's playing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's where
I will say though, but at 1 year 5.5, I'll just take Jorginho. Like Brighton's a better team. He's more. Yeah, like he's more locked. Like I'll take Jorginho. I think he's genuinely a player with a lot of upside. Their attack may not be very good this season, but for 5.5, like I will. Yeah, I'll take him.
I'm gonna real quick on the Barry versus Beto, because I think a lot of what you said is accurate. Don't go Barry first, and I say that when he was my boy last year. I think they wanted him to be the guy, and he just wasn't. And Beto was the one that got hot, has stayed hot, and continued looking good. So if you're gonna go one of those for some ungodly reason, then at least go Beto.
Yeah, Michael's saying he would only go for some of those cheaper guys if they're going to go for bench boost game week 2.
Yeah. All right. We've been dancing around it. Let's have the conversation.
I don't want to talk
the big
about
boys. Let's talk the big boys. Like, I have a whole ass monologue about this, so I'll let you guys go first. Like, where are you at on these? Do you think that before we jump to that really quickly, is João Pedro essential? We all have him. There's no reason not to go with João Pedro, right?
I just think that I think the price drop from, like, he's the second best striker clearly on paper. It never pans out to be that way necessarily, but when you're looking for most upside team, and the fact that he stayed at 7.5 mil is really surprising to me.
Crazy.
I think he's underpriced.
Yeah, 100%. It's also just tough. Like, you're trying to get that Chelsea coverage. Like, he's the only guy that I'm confident in who's going to start and who has the pedigree to output, goals. I think you could say that about Palmer, but at this point he's lost trust. Like for I need to see it from him before then. Okay. So then the question is, sorry, go ahead, Sharpe.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, I think that Palmer and Rodgers are both wait and sees, because you don't need him until game week 4 as a necessity. So I think that's the thing that's playing into it. Yeah, 100%, Michael. I love that we had the big unveiling here, and then we did that, so I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, that's on me. But okay, give me your guys' thoughts here. Like, when we were starting to look, and I had both these teams in my team analysis, I was looking at their fixtures and was like, how do you not go with both of these guys? Because the fixtures for the first 5 or 6 are fucking unbelievable for both of them. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on, do you need both of these guys? Do you have a preference between them?
So
I'll start with Mack, because I think I know where Sharpe's going.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think would be a great way to segue into this is I think that we should, Sharpe, I don't know if you made any big changes, but I think we should compare your draft to my draft, because I have both of them in my draft right now. And what scares me about that is who I have to sacrifice for that. Luke, I'm not sure where you've landed, but would you be cool if I pulled up my draft?
Yeah, go nuts.
Okay, so this is my draft on paper. We've kind of worked our way through the teams. This is completely subject to change, and I will tweet out what I change. I need to get into Plan FPL and just look at my rotation a little bit. But what you'll notice is I like to play sort of like a 3-5-2 So my two complaints about my team right now is that my midfield feels extremely weak. Like I have two budget guys and then Anderson and Solis. And so the average price of my midfield is like 6 mil, excluding Bruno. And then I feel like I'm very heavy up front. Now we've already talked about the pro of going up to a 6.0 third forward. But I think this is the big debate. We have some concerns about Haaland's minutes in game week 1. We have concerns about, as Michael was pointing out, Haaland's just ability to get the ball now that Doku's out, although I think Semenyo will still be pretty decent for that. But I'm trying to capitalize on the DEFCON guys in the back, but look how weak my midfield is. And I think that this is the really big debate. I have Gomez, Anderson, Solis, and Singare, and that is just really scaring the hell out of me. Like there is so much risk for my team because of the popular guys who I don't own.
Yeah, I think that extra 0.5 that you're spending at the keeper position feels like it could be utilized. But
yeah, but not in a massive way because the jump from the 6.5 is to 7.5. It's not like a meaningful upgrade. Versus, I think now when we pull up Sharpe's team, and I think the reason I wanted to get into this was because I think that it answers some of the questions. Sharpe, I think you're no Bruno, and look what it enables from a midfield perspective, which is the main criticism of my team. Same goalie, same goalkeepers, same forward line. This midfield feels so much stronger.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like when we were in the chat earlier this week, I texted you guys and said, show me a draft with Bruno and Haaland that you like. And I cannot make one. I can't find one where I'm like, oh yeah, I love this team going in. Because you have to make so many sacrifices across the board. And like, I'm not saying that, that can't be a fine strategy. Like they're both going to be great players and you can make it work. But to your point, Mac, yeah, you look at your team and you're like, am I confident in this going into the game week 1? Like, is this who I really want to start with? So anyway, go into it, Sharpe. Sorry.
No, yeah. I think for me, when I looked at this whole debate, is that I'll say it, last year I got burnt on this with Salah. I quoted that he was, 3 out of the past 5 seasons, the highest scoring guy. How could you go without him? How couldn't da-da-da-da-da? And I haven't learned anything, so I'm quoting Haaland's early game week statistics, right? Like, I mean, that guy simply scores when the season starts. There's no way around it. So to me, I quoted that earlier as well, that with no Doku, his numbers go significantly down. I just think that the Haaland is going to outweigh everything else that's going on around him because he is that good. He's coming out of a great World Cup. I refuse to doubt him until he tells me I have to doubt him. So for that reason, I'm going to look at a guy that over the course of, I'm going to call 5 seasons, has had 2 good seasons in Bruno. And yes, they have. I got to bench this one. I got to bench this one. Don't you
Honestly,
worry.
fair call out.
It is, but I'll get to that in 1 second. Just speaking on the debate between the two, like, I just can't say that he's going to repeat from last year. Like, yes, you can say that there's more talent around him if he plays in the right position now consistently. That should up his floor. I think he overperformed significantly with 12 XA and getting 25 last year. Like, that's insane. He's just not going to do it again. So I know he has. Go ahead.
Sorry, that was what I was asking for. Continue.
Yeah.
No, so I know he
got basically double the assists he was supposed to. So yeah.
Yep, and they don't have Casemiro. Also, Michael's bringing up a great point that Bruno's kind of a slow starter. Yeah. And I think that on the no Bruno versus no Haaland debate, this is 100% where I land, and I'm tempted to take Bruno out of my team because you can still get into Man United with some of their defense and Bumo. And even if we have minutes concerns about Bumo, you really only need the Manchester United guys for like the first 4 weeks, and we can sort of wait and see on Bruno. And then I just think you're insane if you don't pick a guy with 77% ownership, because that means that if Haaland returns and you don't have him, you are losing.
Yeah, you're fucked.
You're the one against 3 other players. So 1 out of every 4 players doesn't have him right now, and you're just gonna get tanked on rank, and that's just not a risk I'm willing to take. I would rather take a hit owning Haaland and make that decision than try to get to him, because trying to get back into a Haaland is like impossible in the early season when prices are going nuts and transfers are few and far between, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. Going no Haaland is just fucking stupid. I wouldn't tell anybody to do that. I don't know why anyone has a draft that has
Michael
Isak in the
Michael has a draft with no Haaland, and oh my god, you have
Oh,
you have
this
no.
is
Okay, I literally didn't even know. That's hilarious. Okay, talk us through it.
All right. Setting the stage. Okay, Sharpe, you kind of took some wind out of my sails by already commenting that last season, so last season, the pitch, I've been making this every year, is like basically I try to go without the most expensive player to start the season. And that's not like a hard and fast rule. It's just that I get to Mack's point every time where I'm trying to build the team with that player. And I'm like, I fucking hate this team. Like I can't get the depth I want, what have you. So I'm always inclined to do that. I decided maybe last week that I wasn't going to go with both of them, because I was like, I just cannot get a team put together that I really like. So then the debate of which one do you go without, right? And I think the only thing I've heard that's like go Haaland is exactly what you're talking about, Sharpe. Hey, he always starts on time. He always, puts away the goals to start the season. That's the big motivation. And everybody's scared of that, of multi-goal games in his first few games. And I think like as a data guy, that almost makes me want to go the other way, because I'm like, cool, then we're going to adjust to the mean at some point. And I think this season is as good as any to make that adjustment, because it's not the same year. Like you can say that for all the previous years because they've all been very consistent. He's had a full offseason. He's had Pep. He's had consistency in the players that are around him. And City have a massive amount of turnover. Pep is gone, and he had a World Cup where he was playing like, what was that, 3 weeks ago in like a quarterfinal game. Like it's not like he played in the group stages. Like they went significantly far. So my thought process of why Haaland probably starts fast is because he gets a lot of good offseason physical and mental rest to reset for the year and then comes out firing. And I think this offseason is probably the one where he didn't get that. Now, I'm saying all this to justify it to myself of why I can make this pick. But I think it's definitely like a huge gamble to be taking, to your point, Mac. And like it is exactly the same thing as Salah last year. It's the same thing. I started without him and said, I'm going to go the other direction and try it. But I think the flip side of the secondary reason, but points to the same conclusion of how do you pick one or the other, is just those fixtures for Bruno to start. Like what really sold me there was, Mac, when you were doing the whole City analysis, it was like, this team fucking sucks. Like no offense if there's a whole fan in the chat, but like they shouldn't be in the Prem, right? And he starts the opening game of the season playing them, and then he follows that up with Ipswich. So it's like, how do you go against a guy who was the second highest scoring player by 4 points last season and is a consistent starter? He's on pens, he's got all these routes to points, and he's playing those shitty teams in weeks 1 and 2. Obviously Haaland plays them in 3. So going back to my draft, the thought process here was, okay, go the no Haaland side and dive really far into it and go the no City side, and then free hit in 3 when they play Coventry. So then you're missing out on City in those first couple weeks. There you go. You're missing out on City in those first couple weeks, to the point of how do you get back to him if after the first 2 weeks I'm like, Haaland puts away 2 hat tricks and I'm just like, all right, I got to call uncle. I can do Bruno Fernandes down to gross, like a 5.5, and then Isak up to him. So it is a 2 transfer move. It's not like the craziest thing in the world. Obviously it comes at the expense of Bruno at that point, but like it is what it is. And I think it's not that I don't think Haaland's going to score to start the season. Don't get it twisted. Obviously he's excellent, and like I have no doubts in him as a player, but it's just like, can I make up for the points that he's going to score in those first couple games with the other players I can get? And I feel like it balances my team so much better. Anyway, so that's the thought process. That was the monologue, but now rip it apart.
No, I think they're great parts. They're great thoughts, but I unfortunately can't rip it apart because this is where I have to depart for my 8:30 p.m. work call. So I'll see you guys later. Personally, I'm too much of a coward. That's my only point. That being said, I do really like this idea that Michael brought up of like getting back into Haaland in game week 5, and capitalizing on those early fixtures with Isak. So that's some food for thought. Good luck for the season, guys. I'll be tweeting out my final draft, and then we'll probably be streaming again this time next week if you guys want to reflect on game week 1. See you, folks.
Yeah, we'll see if we want to reflect by that point, or if any of us have already had enough of it. That'll be TBD.
Yeah.
I don't love about this is that I've got like questions in terms of if Zoli's is not going to play, okay, now you're moving
Right.
DCL in there. If Ben White becomes a risk just because we're talking that entire back line becoming an issue, like then we're going back down to Colwell. Like I'm also just not a KDH fan, so I don't like him there.
Sure.
I think you could free some stuff up if you move Tark around and possibly have something there. Like you certainly have the flexibility if you really want to, so I could pick it apart for the players. I stand by that. I think Bruno's just not a good investment. Like I think we're just going to be at an impasse on that one, so it's just really a matter of which one personal preference at that point.
No, 100%. And I think if I was just comparing the players, irregardless of fixtures to start, I would go with Haaland. Like I would pony up the 3.5 and do it. It really is the first couple fixtures for me. Is like, I think that those could be really explosive for City, and it's worth noting. Like, first couple for City are Bournemouth and Palace, and like the whole center of the table this season, it's like you have your best teams, like the guys we know, and then you have the promoted sides. Everyone in the middle, I feel like you could say is like the same. Like I don't know what to expect from Bournemouth or Palace. So like I don't think that for Haaland those are like automatic. He's going to be excellent fixtures. They're standard. They're very standard fixtures. So that's really more where the decision comes from. It's less about the players. And yeah, maybe eventually I get Haaland back, but I just am not like there's nothing outside of that game week 3 at Coventry that I'm terrified of. That I'm like, oh, that's a brutal week. I can't do that. So high level that, but yeah, as far as the players go, like I feel like the reason why I've gone with a lot of these guys is I feel like it helps me in the case of what you're talking about of guys, who fall out, right? Cole, I think, will be a pretty consistent starter in the Chelsea backline, so I'm not like super worried about him. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin is fine. Yeah. But to your point, like I feel like the guys that I'm the most concerned about, and if I'm playing worst case scenario that could go really bad, are your Mbumos. He starts seeing minutes lost. Yeah, Solis is a trap, and then Ben White starts getting pulled, and I'm in a real trouble. I just can't find anybody at those price points that I feel more confident in, but I very much so hear that because I have the same concerns. I hear the criticism in that sense.
Yeah, I think the Bumo becomes a question for all of us too. Obviously, he not playing in their last game or not starting, like that's a big problem. So he becomes a question mark. He is for me. But
I think when I'm looking in this 7 mil plus that we've put together here, I'm like, who is, that's what I was trying to get at. Like, so I think for me, if I was going to switch Bumo out for somebody, it would be Wirtz. But then I'm like, the gamble is more just that Wirtz, then I'm really doubling up on Liverpool attack and being like, they fucking better do it,
which is aggressive considering. I mean, Areola should get us there, but I think what the high-level look at this does tell us is that when you do go down from Haaland, that frees up both Bruno and Gabriel. Because if you do the math on it, you get to go from, if you didn't have Bumo in here, but Bumo up to Bruno and a Calafiori or insert Arsenal defense up to Gabriel, and exactly that move down to Isak. So a high level, that is, I think, what that frees up with you. But I think both of our teams, like we've talked about, have a plethora of options and free funds to be able to go where you want to go and pick your player there.
Do you think at this point you could be convinced to go back Haaland and Bruno? Like, I feel like once you rip the Band-Aid off, it's like you can't go back. Like, it's so hard.
Not. And like I said, I'm on the bench boost here, and that's a lot of my thought going into it as well. Being able to bench boost early and not rely on one of those promoted sides. Like, we can talk about how bad Hull is, and don't get me wrong, they are, but like the team still got here and Coventry still got here. Like, all of a sudden we're gonna say, wow.
No disrespect to Hull fans.
No, obviously. McBurney, huge fan. Love that guy. But to me, that just doesn't entice me as a bench boost. This entices me more, in which that is to have a broad range of players that I get to pick from. I got a lot of guys here that can score points, and I'm not convinced on keeping Haaland for super long, as I've shared, and that gives me the option to go wherever I want, whenever I really want to go there. And so this, I think, again, covers me in terms of if I pick a couple guys wrong, if Zolis doesn't play, okay, again, like we said, DCL, or I have Lefay, who does have those good first fixtures, that is on pins there as well and involved. And then obviously Calafiori's on my bench, which is a risk in and of himself, but if he is playing those 60 minutes and the attack threat that he is, like, I feel really confident there. So I feel like this, like we talked about, just gives a lot of flexibility, and I'm excited for that. Of the midfield that I've chosen, Wirtz, playing in the position that he's playing now, having the minutes secured as I believe that they are, and hopefully an actual attacking running coach instead of whatever we were doing last year is going to be good. I think Bumo is still going to be that starter at the striker position as the season starts. Sesko's not really back to full practices yet, so I'm not super concerned there. As much as
I think I'm less concerned about Bumo starting and more about him getting rotated like during the game.
Yeah, so fair. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that comes because I don't think we know right now. The Foden Semenyo, what that did was allow me to go to Raya. So I did have 4.5 rotating goalkeepers here with Verbruggen, but taking Semenyo down to Foden affords me something better. So I really like that right now. And I got 5 mils across the back. Like, let's see who puts the hand up.
No, I think this is really robust from that perspective. Like there's obviously minutes concerns among some of these guys, like your Fodens and your Bumos and your Maguires, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a team right now that doesn't have somebody along those lines. So we're all taking some level of a gamble, and it's who are you taking? So okay, you're on bench boost 1. Do you have any other chips planned for sure, or is the rest of it just kind of like seat of your pants?
Yeah, I think the best laid plans are going to get tossed out as soon as game week 1 happens from a lot of us, and we know how reactionary I am. So I have laid out just going through a little planner through the first 9 game weeks, and with the transfers that I have planned, which include a Haaland out, I think I can push off any chip usage until game week 9 when I would either free hit or wild card, just because of the team that I would have at that point would not have the greatest of fixture runs. So that's kind of out there, but I'm always a proponent of just holding. Like, you never know when you could have 4 injuries all of a sudden. Like, crazy things can happen. So I hold my wild card. I think the triple captain will just be who puts their hand up early season that then plays a promoted side real soon after that will probably be when I play that. So yeah, nothing really solidified after the bench boost.
I think this is a good question. Like with this squad, what is your, obviously you have Joe Pedro, but what are your plans to get in a Chelsea guy in that 4? And maybe it's not at all. Maybe it's not worth it, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, I think you have to have at least one, and the one that you have to have is either Palmer, Rodgers, or João Pedro. Rodgers, like we've talked about, going deep into the World Cup. Palmer just being the disappointment that he's been. Those guys I'm shying away from at the very, very beginning of the season. Obviously, both have immense talent, so if they put their hand up, I'm going to need to be there. But either way, by game week 4, I would go Rodgers as my next pick of those players. Yeah. I think we saw him be a one-man show at Villa last year. Like, he was putting some just rippers in. Obviously very talented. So to get to use him in a system with better players that I think will play to his strengths, I think he could be something, but we don't know yet.
Yep. Okay. I want to go back to mine really quickly and ask you a question. So as far as, like, as much as I said, I'm super open to chip stuff and I'm not planning any of that stuff, like that's true. But I do feel like now I've presented myself with opportunities to use them all very quickly. So free hit 3 is like tentatively booked in. That can always be a wild card, or I can make changes at that point. Like, I'm not glued to that, but this team is very much so set up with the Everton guys, your Arsenal guys, your United guys, like with that in mind. So that is the tentative plan. So then you have your bench boost and triple cap. Triple captain. I know you hate it, but I don't think there's any better opportunity to captain Bruno Fernandes, to triple captain Bruno Fernandes than at Hull or Ipswich. I could wait and save the triple cap to maybe if I have Haaland later in the season. Like, I think in 7 they play Coventry or something, or one of the promoted teams. Or I can just save it and try to use it at a different point and just keep it for a rainy day. But I do think that's also kind of my way of being able to defend against Haaland, is potentially trying to maximize on the Bruno Fernandes appeal. It also could backfire and I could be in a pit of despair to start the season, which is classic. So just play that with me for a second. If you were in those shoes and you were definitely going to do it, would you do it in week 1 Hull away or week 2 Ipswich at home?
I would do it week 1. And the reason for that, I think you're going to compete against a lot of bench boosts, so it's going to put you on par with that. I think that's when Haaland, we talked about Bournemouth and maybe not knowing what to expect from them. Losing Senesi, massive, to a defensive line. and the coach that's coming in hasn't coached in a league in 2 years. So I'm not going to say I have a lot of confidence in him. Even when he was coaching, he liked a high counterattacking style. I think that's going to leave him open in the back. So you're competing against Haaland game week 1 as well at Bournemouth. I think for that reason I would go, and Hull just being the bad team that they are. What I do like about this, though, hearing you say this, is I rewatched a lot of our end of season pods last week, and everything you did was wrong. So, I'm hoping I'm hoping that that's good signs.
That's correct. Yeah, and isn't that great, right? That I'm just putting the absolute highest stakes on it to start the year, so that misery can jump in so quickly. Yeah, as far as the bench boost goes, I think this is the same for your team. When you're able to spread the funds, you don't have as many doubts. And so, when people are talking about bench boosting 1 and 2, that's a lot built around who are the promoted teams playing each other, because they're trying to bring in budget picks and make it work. But when you don't have a Haaland or a Bruno, you can afford to not really rely on those guys too much. So I was really not gearing towards an early bench boost. I was just like, I'll wait till I wild card at some point and do it right after. I don't really give a shit. But if I put this team together, then I have all starters in theory, right? Things could go wrong as always, but then it does kind of bring me to game week 2 and looking at this and being like, if there aren't any surprises among these guys in week 1, I'm tempted to pull the trigger on that. But that goes with the caveat that I started off the pod with of you still don't know what.
You don't. I like your idea. This is the only say I would have on it is get Verbruggen out just because he plays Chelsea and put a different 4.5 in there if you're going to bench boost too.
That's fair. The reason let me hit you with that on the goalkeeper stuff, because I know we talked about that earlier. So originally, right, this was Pickford in a 4-0, Lamens and Verbruggen. The reason that is they have just excellent rotation together. I'm basically playing this year promoted or a last year promoted side every week with the two of them. But I'm certain that's probably the thing I'm the least set on is how to go with goalies here. So that's probably subject to change. I think Mack brought up some good points with Raya. I could save some money there and take Ben White down to somebody else, like one of the 5-0s or something. So there's opportunity, but then, if you dead spot that second goalkeeper, you can't bench boost. I don't really care, but that was part of the thought process, was it gives me that upside.
Yeah. I think goalies are so much just what do you want to do? We're all end up close no matter what.
100%. All right. Well, we've talked for almost 2 hours here. Thanks for all the comments and for all y'all who've hung out, but and RIP to Mac. But thank you guys for hanging around. We'll be back next week to talk game week 1 and get into some of the details of what's to come. And I'm either going to be really happy or really depressed. But thanks y'all for listening.
Share your teams out in the Twitter world so we can look at them.
Yes, sir. All right. Catch you guys next time.
Best of luck.